Past Sins Prelude, Part 2. For it is tonight we give this essence of our queen life of its own. It is tonight our queen's shackles to the meek Princess Luna shall be broken forever, and it is tonight that our campaign to retake Equestria begins. Nexus reared back and raised his voice to a triumphant shout. Now, lend your magic to the spell, my brothers and sisters, for tonight our victory is at hoof. For tonight, Nightmare Moon will be born anew. The cult cheered, sharing in Spell Nexus's jubilation before quickly going about their work. The unicorns formed a circle around the clearing, and their horns glowed as the lines of paint they had drawn on the forest floor came to life with a blue incandescence. At the same time, Stonewall, one of the few earth ponies at the ritual, walked around the circle. With a torch in his mouth, he lit the bowls filled with oil-soaked powders, causing them to flare with an eerie blue flame. A similar scene was occurring in the air above the ritual. There, the Pegasi cult members held more bowls of powder, keeping them aloft while Greygale and Nightwind flew amongst them. The two armored Pegasi lit each bowl with a practiced efficiency before joining Stonewall on the edge of the spell, where the trio would watch as it unfolded. Spell Nexus himself watched all this, and, once all the bowls were lit, he waited until the air became sufficiently saturated with magic. He then used a spell of his own to take the fire from one of the bowls. He held the fire gingerly and carried it over to the ritual center slowly so that it wouldn't die. Then, with a final pleased smile, he tossed the fire into the bowl containing the shreds of Nightmare Moon and the bloody dagger. The shreds burst into flame almost instantly, and Nexus quickly retreated to the edge of the circle to join his fellow unicorns. There, they all began to twist and form the magic in the air, working it like potters with clay. They shaped the free magic, molded it, and began to force it down into the bowl that contained the shreds of Nightmare Moon. And, after a few anxious moments, Nexus saw what he had hoped for. The blood-soaked dagger started to float above the fire, cradled by the energies of the spell. The blood was drawn up from the blade and formed into a single crimson sphere. The dagger itself was then launched clear of the spell with such force that its polished blade dug deep into one of the trees surrounding the ritual. Then, with the dagger gone and the blood remaining, black smoke began to billow from the central bowl. The shreds of Nightmare Moon were starting to burn, and the smoke they released formed around the large drop of blood. The fires, smoke, and magic from the wooden bowls set around the spell were drawn in as well. Everything was swirling and orbiting around the spell's focal point, being drawn in like water in a whirlpool. The drop of blood became encased in a black sphere, and that black sphere began to slowly grow. It drew in the fire and smoke and everything else, growing larger with each passing moment. "Yes, it is working, my brothers and sisters," Nexus called out. "She is beginning to take shape. Our queen shall soon be crack-a-coom." Many of the cult ponies jumped a foot in the air when a single bolt of lightning raced down from the sky and struck the very center of the spell, sundering the metal podium and wrapping the drop of blood, the shreds of Nightmare Moon, and the wooden bowl in crimson flames. At the same time, the cult's carefully constructed cloud cover was blown back, and a full battalion of royal guards flew down from the sky. "Freeze! You're all under arrest!" Several of the guards shouted as dozens of other gold-armored Pegasi landed in the center of the clearing. However, not a single pony froze. The cultists instead charged the guards, turning the once carefully tended clearing into a battlefield. Yet, as the battle began, Spell Nexus stood flabbergasted. He watched as the center of the spell and the precious shreds of Nightmare Moon were destroyed. All their plans had been decimated by a single surge of magical lightning that could have only come from one source. Turning his eyes skyward, Nexus glared at the next figure to float down through the hole in the clouds. With a single flash of her horn, the figure brushed away the cloud cover like froth from a cup of hot cocoa. "Celestia," Nexus forced through gritted teeth as he locked his turquoise eyes on the Sun Princess. She floated down amidst the fighting, casting back any pony that dared attack her with barely any effort, and it enraged Nexus. Every fiber of his being wanted him to attack, to smite down Celestia for daring to interrupt the ritual, but he knew better. "Don't think you've won today, Celestia. You have merely delayed me at best," Nexus hissed. He then barked at any cultist nearby, calling them to him as his horn began to glow. Together with Greygale, Nightwind, and Stonewall, and a few dozen of the other cultists, Nexus cast his spell, and the group as a whole seemed to vanish into thin air. Have you apprehended all involved? Celestia asked. After rescuing Twilight, she had taken her student home and sent her straight to bed. Twilight resisted a bit, but after what she'd been through, it didn't take much to get her to fall asleep. Celestia had then turned Ponyville's Golden Oaks Library into a base of operations, keeping guard of her student personally while having her guards bring their reports to her. We have captured a great number, but we believe some were able to escape by using magic to disguise themselves, the guard reported, head bowed respectfully to Princess Celestia. We believe it was an invisibility spell, and we followed their tracks into the forest. Unfortunately, the tracks eventually ended. We are currently working under the belief that the missing cultists realized their mistake and corrected the spell so they hid their tracks as well. We are continuing to search the forest with the aid of the zebra that reported your student's pony napping. Ah, yes, Zecora. Please make sure that she is properly thanked for all that she has done this evening. Also, please extend to her an invitation to the palace, so that she may join Luna and I for dinner on an evening of her choosing. Of course, Princess, the guard answered as he raised his head. Though, if I may ask, what do you believe these ponies were trying to do? I do not know, Celestia admitted. All we were able to find out from the information we gathered prior to this night was that something was going to happen. Unfortunately, Twilight had her head covered by a thick sack for most of her pony napping. She doesn't know enough for us to ascertain this group's purpose. What about the spell? Celestia shook her head. The spell is not something I recognize. If it is from a book or ancient scroll, then I have not read of it. But it could just as easily be a new spell, a ritual crafted for a specific purpose, though that purpose still remains to be unearthed. Sorry, guys. Make sure that the details of the spell itself remain preserved. It will need to be studied. The guard snapped into a salute. Of course, Princess. We will gather any evidence at the scene and have it taken to the castle until such time it can be examined. Good. I have no doubt that the spell's purpose was dark, and I will not stand for my student being threatened, Celestia said, her eyebrows furrowing with determination. I want the truth of this revealed, Captain, with all haste. Of course, Your Majesty. The unicorn guards searched the area, sweeping it with their magic to try and detect anything left behind. What remained of the wooden bowls were gathered, and any unburnt powder was collected together into a single bag. Everything and anything that was not natural to the evergreen forest was taken from the clearing, though the guards did not extend their search into the bordering trees and bushes once it became clear that the ritual's radius ended at the tree line. All that was gathered was loaded into a waiting chariot, and, since the unicorns were finished, the Pegasi hitched to the chariot took flight. They rose quickly into the sky before banking towards Canterlot. At the same time, the unicorns below began forming into a line, while the lieutenant of the squad began to relay orders. All right, stallions, let's go join the group searching near the forest for any of the cult members that might have escaped. Give higher priority to any that appear to be unicorns. One of them has used some kind of crazy magic to get away, and we do not want that to happen a second time. Sir, shouldn't some of us remain here to guard the crime scene? One of the soldiers spoke up, a newer recruit of the Royal Guard. No, these cultists are too careful for that, the lieutenant answered his recruit. If the zebra Zecora hadn't witnessed Twilight Sparkle's pony napping, we wouldn't have even known if any of this was happening. That means these ponies planned all of this without Princess Celestia or anyone in the guard finding out about it. And that means they're not going to backtrack when they've got a battalion of guards hot on their tails. Besides that, the lieutenant continued, this isn't Central Park in Canterlot. The Everfree is dangerous. There are monsters in here that could eat a pony twice my size in a single gulp, armor and all. This isn't a place where we want to spend any more time than necessary. But if you want to stay here and guard the scene of the crime, be my guest. Just watch out for the hydras, the veteran guard concluded. He then motioned to the rest of the squad, guiding them out into the forest to join the ongoing search. Only the guard who had spoken up remained in the clearing as the others disappeared amongst the trees. He remained there for a minute, but then the lieutenant's words got to him. He broke into a gallop, sprinted to catch up with his comrades, and left the clearing to once more succumb to the calm quiet of the everfree forest. Yet, the magic that lingered in the air like a heavy mist began to shift, sparkling in the cool night air as it was drawn to one side of the clearing. There, hidden away by a bush a few feet into the forest, a black sphere lay amongst the dirt. It was the same sphere which was cast away from the center of the spell by Celestia's bolt of lightning. The tiny black ball was nestled into a crook of the cold ground, and from there it drew in the lingering magic like a magnet attracting metal. It pulled in the energy, and, with each ounce it absorbed, it grew larger. Then, when the sphere had doubled in size, it pulsed. That pulse caused tiny drops of blood to weep from pores in the sphere's surface. It was the blood that had been harvested at the edge of the dagger only moments before, but now it was black and gooey. The life had been drained from it, and it was now being discarded like trash. With each pulse, the sphere excreted more of the dead blood, forming a smear on the ground. Then, when none of the used blood remained, the sphere's pulsing shifted. It became weak, but distinct pitter-patter that lived in the chest of almost every living creature. A heartbeat. All the while, the sphere continued to grow larger and continued to draw in the magic of the clearing and continued the process begun by the spell Celestia had interrupted. And that concludes part 2 of the prelude to Past Sins. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Stay tuned for chapter 1. Okay. Like, favorite, comment. I honestly don't care. And I'm out.